A very good evening to all parents, and it's just on the stroke of 5:30, and I would like to welcome you to my grade 6 college application process evening. And it's about this time that I'd ask you just to wait for some parents who are still parking their cars and entering. But in actual fact, you're watching this from the comfort of your own home. And so it is something slightly different this time around this year. Because of COVID, we can't have the parents come in and sit amongst each other without wearing masks and social distancing. And according to our protocol, it can't happen. But what I've decided to do is to send you the information as to what I would present to a grade 6 group. So welcome this evening. And I do hope you enjoy the next sort of hour and a half. No, I'm joking. The next sort of 20 minutes of the presentation. So I'd like to get started with how this process works and how to decide on what could be the right fit for your boy. And so what I've done is I have a shoe with me. You may not be able to see it, or if I hold it up, you might see it now. And it's a little bit worn. It's a little bit tacky in a way. It's one I wear to school, and you can see the scuff marks in the front because I tend to drag my feet. But the point is that it fits. And from a variety of different shoes that I could have picked from at the store, I picked these. Why? Because first and foremost, it appealed to me, absolutely. It's a good color, it's leather. But the most important thing for me is that when I put my foot inside that shoe, it made sense. It is comfortable, it's a good feel, it's a good walk. And knowing that when I put that shoe on, it's the right fit for me, that was why I made the decision to buy the shoes. So using that as a metaphor for your son, that's the sort of idea I would like you to get into your mind, along with your boy or boys, that whenever you walk into a school, you might get that gut feel, that feeling around, what am I doing here? What does the school look like? There are lots of questions that are going to go through your head, but there is a reason why your son is at the Ridge School, and that's because there is a feeling within you when you walk through those gates. You said to yourself and with your family, this is the right fit. And you will know that when you enter several of the schools going forward, that this could be the right fit for your boy. So there are lots of choices to make when dealing and conversing around the table around the college of choice. So things like being a day boy or a boarder, the family just logistics around that. What does that look like? Weekly boarding or termly boarding? Is it an all boys school? Is it a co-ed school? What are the logistics in terms of pick up and drop off? And are there any other family members that might not have the same holidays or terms? Is it an academic, sport, or music institution? Is it all three? Is there a specific one you would like your son to attend? Is it a learning support for those who may need that extra support at college? And family history. I know that's important. But again, schools change and institutions change and times have changed. So I think it's important for you to understand that if I'm going to base the decision just on family history, is it the right fit for my boy? Is this the right school for him, even though it might have been the right school for generations before him? And then friends and friendship groups. I am fully aware that boys pick colleges because of their friends and their friendship groups. That's not the be-all and end-all. Understand that when they move from college into university, if that's the case, or into the work environment, they might not have their friends with them. What's great about the Ridge School, and why I've been here for so long, is that it's a standalone, independent all boys. And the reason for that is that the boys make their friends here, but have the choice to move on to a new adventure at a different college to create new friends and friendship groups. So, some of the schools within the Johannesburg area, just to give you an indication of where our boys apply, St. John's, St. David's, and St. Stithians. Those schools outside of the Johannesburg area, and St Albans just across the Yixco, as Mr. Stanley would put it. You've got Hilton, Michael House, which is in the KwaZulu-Natal area, St Andrews, Kersey, and Bishops, which is sort of Eastern Cape, Western Cape, and further afield. And then there's some other options. And all these schools, which I've listed here, are schools that boys have applied to and either taken that opportunity to attend the institution or pick something else. So we've had boys go off to Red Hill, to Crawford, to Treverton. Stanford Lake has come across the table. Southern Cross, Uplands, Kes and Parktown are also some of the highlights or schools that boys have attended in the past. So just to inform you of some of the webinars coming up, obviously the colleges can't hold parent information evenings at the schools or up here at certain hotels or from homes. So Hilton College is having one on the 16th of September for the parents, and on Thursday, the 17th of September for the boys. St John's will be on the 21st of September. Once we get more information on that, I will send that through to you. And Kingswood happened on Tuesday, again on the 15th of September, which is the following Tuesday, and then on the 27th of October, and then the 3rd of November. We will continue to update the app for you, so please be sure to continue checking the college application process icon 2022, but we will alert parents to any additional information that's uploaded. I do want to talk a little bit about the history behind St John's, and I'm not too sure how much information is filtered down through the years. But several years ago, the Ridge had 2 classes per grade of roughly 18 to 20 boys, which meant there were about 36 boys in a grade. Most of those boys, between 70 to 80%, would have applied to St John's, and most would have been accepted, if not all. So here you're sitting with about 36 boys, first choice application to St John's. Most, if not all, would have been accepted. The concern or the problem, but I don't see it as a problem actually, I see it as a solution to a lot of what I'm going to talk to just now, is that the Ridge School has grown. It's grown in numbers. It can't grow in structure, but it's grown in numbers, which is a really good thing. And so we had transitioned from 2 classes to 3 classes of 20 to 22 boys. So now we sit with almost double the amount that we had several years ago. And that complicates matters when you have half a grade who are applying to St John's, or even more than that. Perhaps you're sitting with 45 to 50 applications rather than 38. The Ridge did it, Pridwin did it, Jan Cilliers did it, St Peter's did it. So that means there's schools in and around the area that have grown, which compounds the amount of applications to St John's for every year. However, and I'm going to say this, and I know Mr. Wright, who's the deputy of the school, and Mr. West, who is the headmaster, they want our boys. They value our Ridge boys. And I have a very good relationship, especially with St John's, because of this. And we've built a lot of bridges, and we've got really close relationships with the school itself, notwithstanding others like St David's and St Stithians and Hilton and Michaelhouse and the rest. So we work really hard behind the scenes to make sure that your son is known and that his application is looked at and the interview process will take place. Please understand that even though he might not be accepted first round, there is a really, really good chance, if not almost 100% guarantee, that he will get in at some stage during the year. But I'm happy to talk further within that for those parents who are interested. But I thought I'd give you a little bit of history behind what we do here and the history behind St John's and some of the stories that have been told. So just to give you some stats on that as an idea, from 2016 to 2020, it's increasing numbers. And that's why I've said to you, the building of bridges and the relationship and for St John's to really, really value our boys is evident in the stats, which I'm showing you here. As an example, last year, or this year, let me put it like that, sorry, 36 offers from St John's, 29 accepted. So more than half the boys in terms of offers and obviously just under half a grade who accepted, and the rest went elsewhere. So building on that, I feel very confident moving forward that the process will continue to run as smoothly as it has. So what's our role as educators? You will receive some information at the end of this year or beginning of next year about your son, which we'd like you to fill in, some family information and some stats and some figures for us. We write up confidential reports, and that's a report for each boy in grade 6 who moves into grade 7 next year that will go to the specific high schools that you have chosen as a choice. And that's really valued by the heads and by the deputy heads of the schools, because it speaks a little to the boys and really gives them an overview as to who they are. What we have started, and it was the second year running last year, is personal CVs. And those have really, really struck a chord with the interview panel of the colleges. We work with the boys and we talk through the CV process, and I do a lot with them towards the end of the year. And they go off in the December and they write a personal CV with you, with your help. My expectation is not for you to write their CV because it's your son applying to the school. What I think is important is that you guide them within that process. So it's a personal CV. It's not necessarily the attributes, academic, music, and sporting. It's who they are as individuals. What makes them stand out? What makes them tick? And the interview panel really, really value that because they can talk to that CV when the boy comes in for his interview. So it's worked extremely well. We've got such positive feedback from the heads and the deputy heads and the interview panels that we are going to continue with it this year. We also take them through the interview procedures, which is always fun. We bring in Caroline Depela-Abraham, who runs her own interview institution of sorts, and she works with corporates and she works with schools. And we bring her in and she talks the boys through the process. I talk the boys through the process. And then we have sort of one-on-ones or group sessions where we educate the boys around the interview process. What we don't want is to create robots. So when the boy goes off to an interview, he says the same thing as the boy previous to him. What's important is that the boy is himself and he speaks freely. In a way that sells him and gives him a really good grounding for the interview itself. So what we don't want are boys to regurgitate information that they think the interviewers would want to hear. So we take them through that process. And then we also facilitate the entrance exams, obviously depending on the school of choice. And John's having made contact with them, hoping that they would change maybe the interview process. They are still going to continue with entrance exams. According to St. David's, they will do the same, and St. Stithians will do the same. But we facilitate schools such as St. Andrews and the rest who might need the boys to write an entrance exam or even a scholarship exam. And that is written here at school. And then we communicate via the REGAP. There's a whole lot of information which I will send your way in the days and weeks ahead. So please just be on the lookout for that. I'd like to give you a little bit of feedback from the heads around the interview process, as well as some of the information on what they gathered from the CVs. And I hope you don't mind. I'm going to read through it with you because I think it's important that you understand that this is coming from a head of a college. So we've just finished with so-and-so's interview with this headmaster. It makes a massive difference not to have a child sitting there with a mouthful of teeth, but rather to have thought through an answer or two. And that's what I mean about that interview process. Also, this headmaster was incredibly complimentary of your package that you had sent through, which apparently included the final grade 6 report, the confidential report, and the CV. He had read through this in preparation for the interview. Again, it made a massive difference. And so making contact with the headmasters often, and in actual fact, I'm sort of a thorn in their sides at times because I like to know what's going on. I like to know what their thought processes are. I like to know what's changing, what's happening, what their shift in education will look like in a couple of years' time, so I can give feedback to parents around the schools themselves. And all the schools, and I mean all the schools that I've made contact with, are not necessarily too concerned with the grade 6 report anymore. As much as it counts, because there is a mark or something to that effect, a symbol on it, they're more concerned with the feedback and the comments. And when I asked them around our first reports that were sent out a couple of weeks ago, and just asked for a bit of feedback, saying that there would be no marks on these reports, how does that impact the application? And you would have read my letter that was sent to the parents, where most of the schools have said it's the right way to go. So it says something. It says that the colleges are moving. It says that we are headed in the right direction. We're aligning ourselves, and that's important. So I'll give you an overview of the CV. The format will look like this or something similar to this. I will take the boys through this information. And again, it's just a little profile. And the beauty of this is that we want to not only create a CV with the boys and for you to create a CV with your son, but I think what's important is that it's a skill at the same time. So when they move off into the business world or into the real world, as I put it, they will have had some sort of experience as to how to put a CV together. And I think that in itself says something about the process. So this is what I'll be working with in the months ahead. I'm not going to jump into it right now with the boys. They've got too much on their plate now, but it's more towards the end of the year. Caroline de Pilla Abraham will be part of our interview process to upskill the boys with that. She's from a company called Branching Out. And if you need more information and, you know, if you like to talk with her, feel free to. She's happy to help out where she can. But she works with me and she works with the Rich School in upskilling our boys. So what's your role? Some of the advice I can give you over the years that I've worked on this process is that don't spread your net too wide and don't spread it too thin. I would suggest that you have a choice of a maximum of 3 colleges. I think if you have any more, you start to overheat your son, you start to put pressure, you start to add anxiety to what is already a very anxious time for the whole family. So my advice here, choice of a maximum of 3 colleges. If you need advice on those 3 colleges, I'm very happy to sit with you in a private capacity and talk to some of what the colleges offer and perhaps the right fit or the best fit for your son. Scholarships. I do ask you to keep your expectations realistic. I'm not going to delve too much into that, but scholarships that are on offer from the schools range from academic, music and sport to overall. And if you feel that there is a need for your son to apply for a scholarship, I would like to do that in a private capacity with you, please. Can I ask too, what we've learned through this process is that we don't mention the term first choice school. The reason for doing that is that it alleviates some of the pressure of this school is my number one and the next one, I'm not so sure of. If you are applying to 2 or 3 schools, put them all on the same pedestal or same sort of hierarchy. In that way, what we're saying is that it's okay and it's fine and we're happy with whichever school you choose out of those 3. So there's no pressure on your son going forward. And then just communication. I would like you to communicate with me. I will communicate with you as much as I can from a school point of view. I know that some of the colleges are quite cheeky and they send out information or have sent out information already. I am aware that several boys have gone for interviews, and that's just what the colleges do. The reason why they do that is they want our boys. They want the Ridge boys. And so I ask you to be mindful, please, that it doesn't matter if you apply to a school right now or if you apply at the end of the year. There is no ladder. It's a waiting pool. And it all depends really on the interview, the CV, and the confidential report, really, in terms of your son actually getting in. I'd like to go through some of the questions which have been asked in the past. And then obviously, if you have any more questions, we'll be running a Q&A session on the 16th of September. All that information is in my letter. Do the grade 6 reports impact on entrance exams, interviews, and the application process? I've mentioned that before, not as much as they did in the past. We do need to send a report through, but high schools do acknowledge and understand that a marker or symbol doesn't represent the holistic overview of the boy who's sitting across the table from them in the interview. And I think that is so important. And we've worked so hard at the Ridge School to get that message across to the colleges themselves. Where do the boys write the entrance exams to schools outside of Joburg? Again, I've answered that question earlier. You will write here. We will facilitate everything. I will send information prior to that writing as to what the boys need to bring in with them. And it normally is just a pencil bag. Boys don't need to write in their blues. And we will need to relook at things. Just thinking off the top of my head now, if we back to lockdown, the colleges will need to really rethink their strategy around what that looks like. But that's for a later stage. How do we know if we should apply for a scholarship? Please come and talk to me. I think let's be open and honest and frank about this, and I will be with you. So yeah, that's where I'll leave it. What do we do if we haven't heard anything from a school of choice by the time other boys have? First thing I'm going to tell you is don't panic. Please don't panic. We have everything under control. What normally happens is if you apply to a school in the Johannesburg area, they normally send out their acceptances earlier than schools outside of Gauteng. So you'll find that the likes of St. John's and David's and Stithians, perhaps even St. Albans, will send their acceptances sooner than schools like Hilton, St. Andrews, Michaelhouse, and the rest. Where the anxiety creeps in is if you've applied to a school in Johannesburg and a school, let's say in Pietermaritzburg, and you haven't heard when the first round acceptances have been released and you're waiting on the Natal school, that's when some of the anxiety creeps in. But we have our finger on the pulse. So all I'm asking you to do is not to panic. And I will make contact with those families if they haven't heard anything by a certain time. I normally make contact with the schools too prior to that. And I meet with the heads and the deputies prior to any of the interview processes and entrance exam, because I take them through each and every boy. I want them to know how special your son is prior to anything that takes place. What do the entrance exams test? Grade 6 English and Maths. So the work that your son would have covered normally by end of August, about now, or sort of halfway through term 3. That's the sort of content. Sometimes I'll throw in a humdinger of sorts, really just to test those boys for scholarship material in terms of the academics. Sometimes they test general knowledge depending on the school. So it's always worthwhile to revise some of the general knowledge and what's happening in and around the country and the world for these entrance exams. Who can I talk to if I need any guidance or assistance in this process? Come speak to me. I know the grade 7 staff are on hand to offer insight, so please feel free to call on them. But I am here to help at the same time. So we'll be sending a pack in the next few weeks, and this will consist of the CV outline. It will consist of the CV template. There is a slight tweak in both. The outline is the CV that the boys will work on. The template is the CV that the boys will look to for guidance. I'm very happy if the boys handwrite it. I'm very happy if the boys type it. So it's theirs to own, and that's what's important. And then just some advice on choosing a senior school. I'll send some more information around that. And that is the end of the presentation. What I am going to suggest is that you join the Q&A session, please, next week. But I thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you missed anything, the beauty about this is that you can always go back or rewind and pick up something that you may have missed out on. Wishing you a good evening and all the best. We'll see you soon. Thank you.